My name is Claire Harper, and for the longest time, I was just another face in the crowd. You know that feeling? The one where you walk into a room full of people who barely glance your way because they don't see anything special about you? That was me, forgettable, unremarkable, replaceable. At least, that's what they told me every day at my job. Hell, it wasn't even subtle. They made sure I knew exactly how expendable I was. But let me back up. Let me tell you how I got here, because this story isn't just mine anymore. It belongs to everyone who's ever been dismissed, overlooked, or underestimated. This is a story about power, betrayal, and justice. The kind of justice that doesn't come easily but burns brighter than anything else when it finally arrives. I started working at Crestwood Innovations 5 years ago. Back then, I thought it would be different. Everyone talks about their dream job, right? Well, Crestwood felt like mine. They were an up-and-coming tech company with big ideas and flashy offices filled with natural light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The CEO, Marcus Hale, used to stand on stage at conferences talking about innovation, teamwork, and making the world better, not just richer. He had all these quotes about how employees are the backbone of any great company. I believed him. God help me, I really did. At first, things seemed okay. My role as a project coordinator wasn't glamorous, but it mattered, or so I thought. I worked tirelessly, staying late to make sure deadlines were met, smoothing over conflicts between teams, and keeping projects on track. I even came up with solutions no one asked for, little tweaks that saved time and money. But instead of gratitude, I got silence, or worse, indifference. Every suggestion I offered was either ignored or handed off to someone higher up the ladder without so much as a thank you. The worst part, they didn't even try to hide it. In meetings, I'd sit there while executives nodded along to my ideas, only to see them presented later by someone else entirely. It happened so often that I stopped speaking up altogether. What was the point? If I couldn't get credit for my own work, why bother trying? Still, I stayed. Why? Because deep down, I convinced myself that if I worked hard enough, long enough, something would change. Maybe they'd notice me. Maybe I'd prove them wrong. And honestly, I needed the paycheck. Rent doesn't pay itself, and dreams don't keep the lights on. Then came the day everything shifted, or rather, the moment I realized how disposable I truly was. It started with a new policy rollout from HR, something called the Key Person Clause. Sounds fancy, doesn't it? Like some important legal safeguard designed to protect the company's most valuable assets. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Not for people like me, anyway. The clause basically said that certain critical roles within the company required specific individuals to hold those positions. And if those individuals left under questionable circumstances, the company could take drastic measures to protect its interests. Translation: if you're deemed irreplaceable and decide to leave, good luck finding another job in the industry. Crestwood would bury you before letting you go. Of course, none of us regular folks fell into that category. We weren't key persons. We were interchangeable cogs in their machine, easy to swap out whenever convenient. Except there was one exception. One person whose name kept coming up during those early discussions. Rachel Monroe, our lead strategist. She was brilliant, sharp as a tack, and hated almost everyone, including me. But she was also indispensable. Without her, Crestwood wouldn't have half the success it claimed. So naturally, she became the poster child for the Key Person Clause. Rachel didn't care. She strutted around the office like she owned the place, secure in her untouchable status. Meanwhile, the rest of us watched nervously, wondering what it meant for the future. Would they extend the clause to others? Make it harder for anyone to leave? No one knew for sure, but the uncertainty hung heavy in the air. For months, life went on as usual, until it didn't. One morning, I walked into the office to find chaos brewing in the conference room. Voices echoed down the hall, loud and angry. When I peeked inside, Marcus Hale himself was pacing back and forth, his face red with fury. Across from him stood Rachel, arms crossed, looking smug as ever. Whatever the argument was about, it clearly wasn't going well for Marcus. Curiosity got the better of me, so I lingered near the door, pretending to organize files on a nearby desk. Snippets of their conversation drifted toward me. "This is unacceptable," Marcus barked. "You can't just waltz out the door after everything we've built together." "Oh, I think you'll find I can," Rachel shot back, her tone icy. "And trust me, Marcus, you won't stop me." He slammed his fist on the table. Do you have any idea what this will do to the company? To me? Honestly. Rachel smirked. I don't care. You've had this coming for years. The tension in the room was palpable. Even from where I stood, I could feel it radiating off them. Whatever Rachel planned to do, it wasn't going to end quietly. And judging by the look on Marcus's face, he knew it too. Later that afternoon, rumors spread like wildfire. Rachel was leaving Crestwood for good. Not only that, but she'd already lined up a position with one of our biggest competitors. Worse still, she intended to take several key accounts with her. Accounts that represented millions in revenue. Accounts that Crestwood couldn't afford to lose. Panic set in immediately. Executives scrambled to contain the damage, calling emergency meetings and drafting press releases. Lawyers were consulted, contracts reviewed, threats made. But nothing worked. Rachel held all the cards, and she knew it. Thanks to the key person clause, she was untouchable. Crestwood couldn't fire her, sue her, or prevent her departure without risking catastrophic backlash. As the days turned into weeks, the situation grew increasingly dire. Morale plummeted. Projects stalled. Clients began pulling out left and right, citing instability and lack of leadership. For the first time since its inception, Crestwood looked vulnerable, fragile, human. And yet, despite the mounting crisis, no one spared a thought for the rest of us. The non-key personnel, the ones who kept showing up day after day, trying to hold the pieces together while the ship sank around us. We were invisible, forgotten, irrelevant. Just like always, except maybe not anymore. Because as I watched Crestwood crumble from the inside, something inside me began to shift. A spark ignited, a tiny flicker of defiance that refused to die. All those years of being overlooked, dismissed, treated as expendable. It all came rushing back, fueling a fire I hadn't known existed. If Rachel could stand up to Marcus and win, why couldn't I? Why couldn't any of us? The answer hit me like a freight train. We could. We just hadn't tried yet. With renewed determination, I started paying closer attention to the cracks forming in Crestwood's foundation. I listened to whispered conversations in the break room, piecing together fragments of information. I studied the company's financial reports, searching for weaknesses I could exploit. Most importantly, I connected with other employees who felt the same frustration boiling beneath the surface. Together, we formed a quiet alliance, united by a shared desire for change. What we lacked in power, we made up for in numbers. Slowly but surely, we began pushing back against the toxic culture that had defined Crestwood for so long. Small acts of rebellion at first, a missed deadline here, a misplaced document there, but soon our efforts gained momentum. Word spread among the staff, and more people joined our cause. Even some mid-level managers started questioning the decisions coming down from above, daring to challenge the status quo. Marcus noticed, of course. How could he not? But by the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. The tide had turned, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Or so he thought. Because, unbeknownst to us, Marcus had one last trick up his sleeve, a desperate, dangerous gambit that would force us to confront the true cost of standing up for ourselves. And when it came, it changed everything. That's where I'll leave you for now. This story isn't over, not by a long shot. There's still so much to tell, so many twists and turns ahead. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm finally part of something bigger than myself. Something worth fighting for. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that being called replaceable doesn't define you. It's what you do next that matters. And trust me, what comes next will shake Crestwood to its very core. The moment Marcus realized he was losing control of Crestwood, desperation seeped into every decision he made. He called an all-hands meeting, something he hadn't done in years. The entire staff gathered in the main conference room, a space usually reserved for executives and high-profile clients. I remember sitting toward the back, my hands trembling as I clutched a notebook. Around me, colleagues exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that whatever Marcus had to say wouldn't be good. When he stepped up to the podium, his usual polished demeanor was gone. His tie was loose, his hair disheveled. For the first time, he looked human, vulnerable. But it wasn't empathy that drove him, it was fear. Fear of losing everything he'd built. Fear of being exposed for the fraud he truly was. "Let me make one thing clear," he began, his voice tight but loud enough to silence the murmurs in the room. "Crestwood Innovations is my company. Every idea, every success, every innovation. None of it would exist without me. And yet here we are on the verge of collapse because people have forgotten their loyalty, forgotten who gave them this opportunity." He paused, scanning the crowd with cold, calculating eyes. When his gaze landed on me briefly, I felt a chill run down my spine. Somehow I knew what was coming next. "So, effective immediately, I'm implementing new measures to ensure accountability," he continued. "Starting today, any employee found engaging in activities deemed detrimental to the company's interests will face immediate termination and legal action. This includes sharing confidential information, undermining leadership, or participating in organized dissent." The room erupted in whispers. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some looking guilty, others defiant. Marcus let the tension build before dropping his bombshell. "To identify those responsible for recent disruptions, I've authorized internal audits of all departments. Emails, messages, even personal devices brought onto company property may be subject to review. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to worry about." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Beside me, a co-worker muttered, "This isn't just about Rachel anymore. He's coming after all of us." And he was. That much was clear. What started as a power struggle between Marcus and Rachel had spiraled into something far more sinister. A witch hunt designed to crush anyone who dared question his authority. It was corporate revenge at its finest, or worst, depending on how you looked at it. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with possibilities, each worse than the last. Would they find evidence of our alliance? Could they trace the anonymous emails we'd sent to upper management detailing unethical practices within the company? Did I leave any digital breadcrumbs that could lead back to me? But then, amid the panic, clarity struck. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. Justice for everyone Marcus had wronged, including me. If he wanted a fight, I'd give him one, but not on his terms. Not quietly, not behind closed doors. No, if Marcus Hale thought he could intimidate us into submission, he was dead wrong. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, armed with a plan. First, I reached out to the handful of trusted coworkers who formed the core of our group. We met in a small cafe down the street, away from prying ears. Over coffee, I laid out my proposal. "We can't let him win," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "If he wants to drag us through the mud, fine. But we're going to make sure the whole world knows exactly what kind of man Marcus Hale really is." "What do you mean?" asked Priya, one of the senior analysts who joined our cause. "How do we expose him without getting fired or sued?" I smiled grimly. By using his own rules against him. Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly, gathering proof of Marcus's misconduct. Financial discrepancies, falsified reports, discriminatory hiring practices. It was all there, buried deep in the company's archives. Some of it came from internal documents we'd saved during late-night research sessions. Other pieces were leaked by sympathetic IT staff who shared our disdain for Marcus. By the end of the week, we had more than enough ammunition to take him down. But exposing the truth wasn't enough. We needed a platform, a way to ensure the story reached the right people. That's when inspiration struck: the press. Specifically, investigative journalists known for their unflinching pursuit of corporate scandals. Using burner phones and encrypted messaging apps, we contacted several reporters, feeding them snippets of information while remaining anonymous. Within days, stories began surfacing online, painting Marcus Hale as the ruthless, unethical leader he truly was. At first, Marcus tried to deny everything. He held press conferences, issued statements, and even hired a PR firm to clean up his image. But the tide had already turned. Employees came forward with their own accounts of abuse and exploitation. Clients pulled out en masse, citing ethical concerns. Investors fled, leaving Crestwood teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Still, Marcus refused to step down. Instead, he doubled down, lashing out at anyone he perceived as a threat, including me. One afternoon, I was summoned to his office. When I walked in, he was pacing furiously, his face contorted with rage. Without preamble, he accused me of orchestrating the leaks, threatening to ruin my career if I didn't confess. I stood my ground, refusing to back down. "You think you're untouchable, Claire," he spat. "You think you can destroy everything I've built and walk away unscathed?" "No," I replied calmly. "I think you destroyed yourself. You just needed someone to hold up the mirror." For a moment, he stared at me, incredulous. Then, with a snarl, he dismissed me, warning that this wasn't over. But deep down, I knew it was. Marcus Hale's empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. In the weeks that followed, Crestwood Innovations officially filed for bankruptcy. Marcus vanished from the public eye, his reputation in tatters. As for me, I found myself thrust into the spotlight, hailed as the unlikely hero who took down a corporate tyrant. Offers poured in, from job opportunities to speaking engagements, but I turned most of them down. Fame wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was change. With the help of my former coworkers, I launched an initiative aimed at promoting transparency and accountability in the workplace. Together, we created resources for employees facing similar struggles, offering guidance on how to stand up to toxic leadership without sacrificing their livelihoods. Our message was simple: no one is replaceable. Everyone has value, and sometimes the smallest voices can spark the biggest revolutions. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown since those days when I believed I was invisible. I learned that being underestimated can be a gift, a chance to prove others wrong while staying true to yourself. More importantly, I discovered the power of unity, the strength that comes from standing together, even in the face of overwhelming odds. They called me replaceable once. They lost everything because of it. And now, as I sit here reflecting on everything that's happened, I know one thing for certain. Justice isn't just blind, it's relentless. And so am I.